I'm ready to start turning up and creating walls now. All I've been doing is continuing along, adding bits as I needed. You can see mine's not as stiff in the middle as it could be or should be, and that's because the yarn that I started with really wasn't firm enough. The thicker, if you use a thicker sort of jute or coconut fibre or hemp twine or something, that will be fine in the middle. And so then when I added the 2 strings, you can see it's made a big difference. Also, I think I probably could have used a few more bits of raffia in the middle bit, especially because of how fine this was. So if I'd have used a chunky, more raffia strands to start with, but it's the base of the basket and it's going to sit on a flat table anyway, so that's okay. Can you see all these lines like this? That's because I've only been going into the back of the stitch. If I was going into both stitches, you wouldn't see this lovely little sort of spiral line that's happened. So I quite like it, and it's a feature, like a thing you can do for any crochet that you use. Just to keep in mind, if you go into the back or into the front, you'll get that pattern on the back of your crochet. I have used 2 of those bundles so far, almost 2. So that's approximately 100 grams, I think. I think these were 50 each. I'm going to have to go reweigh them now and write some notes for you. So really it depends on how big you want your thing to be as to how much raffia you use, I suppose. These bits of undyed stuff are what I had tied it up with, and I'm going to use this because you don't waste anything when you're using things, do you? You don't throw away the string and the little bits. I keep every single bit of string that comes on a tag or on anything. If we ever get any of those shopping bags, not that we get that many, but we get some, those paper shopping bags have ribbon or string on them as their handles. I untie all that and save it all, because they're all things that you can use for this sort of thing, or anything like this. So what I've been doing is adding stitches as needed to get bigger. Remember, 2 stitches into 1 stitch in the previous row is how you add. But we don't want to add any more because we want it to go straight, or if you want it to go sort of on a bit of an angle. So what we're going to do is not add stitches. We're not going to decrease, but we're not going to add. So you can see there's quite actually a bit of a gap between the stitches. And what that naturally does is it draws this row to sit on top of the previous row, because you're almost like pulling it a bit tight. You're not shrinking it as such, but you are giving it less space to stretch out. So it doesn't have as much space. So because the stitches are sitting on top of each other, rather than giving out, it's going up. And that's when you're doing crochet. I assume knitting is similar, but I don't do knitting. I'm not sure how you decrease and increase stitches with that. But I'm not decreasing stitches, I'm simply not increasing is what's happening now. So I haven't started decreasing stitches, because if I decrease stitches, I would end up, it would end up buckled and wonky. There wouldn't be enough stitches in there. So all I'm doing is keeping the same number of stitches. And you simply keep doing that, and you'll find, now you can start wherever because it's a spiral, but if you actually have a look where your spiral began and sort of start in that spot, so start here And then when you end up finishing, you can finish in the same spot in line with your spiral. It gives it a little bit of, you know, more continuity, I suppose. You don't notice too much, but they're just those little things that you just want to make sure that you keep in mind. You don't need to use a stitch marker or anything, because you can notice where you started, where your spiral began, and just run your eye along. And you can see here it's not entirely obvious. It's quite subtle once it starts to move up until it's fully on top, but at the beginning it's quite subtle. Make sure that you're always stopping and you're checking that it's sitting how you want rather than just going. It does have a little bit of a flexibility to it at this stage. I'm pulling quite tight right now because I want my walls to be very straight. I'm thinking I might turn this sort of into a tub that my kids can use in their rooms. Maybe to put underwear in, I'm deciding, but maybe not. Maybe that'd be a waste of how pretty it is. You could make fabric tubs for that, for sure. Or I'm also thinking it might be really nice to put a plant in. So that is why I'm pulling tight. I'm always remember to keep on adding as need be. So I'm up to my third bundle of raffia now. And just adding bits as it goes along. If you have done my basket weaving course, then this sort of bit will make sense a lot more. It's actually a bit easier in the basket weaving course, I find. The raffia holds itself together a little bit nicer somehow. I don't know. Maybe it's that the different stitch. I'm finding that this keeps wanting to fall out as I'm doing it. So you really have to, you almost want like 8 arms. Well, at least one more set. 4 arms would be nice, wouldn't it? And if you're using a big fat chunky fibre, then you'll find that it does get a little bit sort of tricky to handle it. So just take it easy. Your hands might get a bit cramped. All right, so simply stitching. Now I have a lot of stitches here. I am going to go into every single stitch, but if you found that you had lots, like you'd put lots and lots on the one before, you might want to decrease a stitch. And technically to decrease, you actually join 2 stitches together, but I'm not going to do that here because it's just too bulky. So what I would do is simply skip a stitch, and you would not even notice in the outcome. You can't even tell. So if you find that you're not, your basket isn't going up as quickly as you wanted, then you can just simply skip a stitch. That's not the proper way to decrease stitches in crochet or knitting, but in this sense, it